Hello all and welcome to CCC Productions. We're going to take a detour from the usual content on this channel and offer up a non-partisan prediction on the 2024 US presidential election, here just under a year from actual election day. Now, we're still around 2 months away from the Iowa caucuses and the beginning of primary voting, but unless something changes, the extremely fair assumption here is that President Joe Biden will be the nominee for the Democrat Party, and that former President Donald Trump will be the nominee for the Republican Party. There's always the chance that this will not be the case, but in all honesty, it probably doesn't change the calculus too much for this election. But it would change some of the historical dynamics. We're going to jump into those dynamics here to help inform us before getting into the nitty-gritty of the predictions. Thank you for taking the time to click on this video. If you haven't already, I would ask that you hit the subscribe button down below and ding the bell for future notifications. It would mean ever so much. Thank you. Going back 100 years, this is the 14th time that the incumbent president is running for re-election. Well, kinda. We're going to be ignoring Franklin Roosevelt's re-election and his re-election in 1940 and 1944 because of its unprecedented nature and its impossibility going forward. Unintentionally balancing that are two elections we will be counting, 1924 and 1964, where the incumbent presidents, Warren G. Harding and John F. Kennedy, did not complete their term. In each case, the sitting vice president, Calvin Coolidge and Lyndon B. Johnson, inherited the presidency and ran for the next term. In case you were wondering, we're not counting 1976, because even though Vice President Gerald Ford inherited the presidency, that was already Richard Nixon's second term, and he was constitutionally ineligible to run again, as opposed to Harding and Kennedy, who in all likelihood would have. 4 times the incumbents lost. Here are the results from the winning election with the results from the losing election. We're leaving the national popular vote here for reference's sake because, as we should know, the national popular vote means nothing. The popular vote within each state certainly matters, a lot, but not the total vote. It's like a best-of-7 series in baseball. Team A scores 55 runs across 7 games. Team B scores 27. So Team A won, right? Well, not so fast. As it turns out, Team B outscored Team A within the confines of 4 individual games, and those were the parameters set forth toward overall victory. Therefore, nobody will complain that Team A should have won the series, and over the many, many years, nobody ever has. See, this happened in real life during the 1960 World Series. Team A was the New York Yankees, Team B was the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's essentially how the popular and electoral votes work. We won't do an entire spiel on the Electoral College here and why it is by a significant margin the best way to elect a president, as that could be its own video. But here in this video, that is the number we will focus on. Alright, back to it. Clearly these individuals had won the presidency 4 years prior, so clearly their voting numbers took a bit of a nosedive. You can see Donald Trump in 2020 saw a small uptick in the national popular vote count, but lost numbers in the electoral votes, which is why he lost. This is no newsflash. Now let's take a look at the 10 who won re-election. 99 years ago, Calvin Coolidge was elected to what would have been Warren G. Harding's second term. Well, maybe not. Harding was facing quite the scandal in his presidency. Coolidge's popular vote dwindled in comparison, in large part due to a viable third candidate who hit double digits, and also in large part to the landslide victory that Harding achieved the prior election. His electoral votes took a small hit as well. Every other re-election here saw the incumbent increase his totals, even in the aftermath of some landslides as seen by Franklin Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, and Ronald Reagan, where you might expect the numbers to come back down, just a little bit at least. All of them except for one, and that would be the last incumbent to be re-elected, Barack Obama, in 2012. In fact, Obama was the first sitting president to ever win a second term with fewer electoral votes and a smaller national popular vote percentage for good measure. As a matter of fact, he performed worse in 44 states and the District of Columbia, and saw an increase of more than 1% in only 2 states, New Jersey and somehow Alaska. Yet, he was re-elected. There could be many reasons for that, but the fact of the matter is he bucked convention. Here are Joe Biden's numbers from his 2020 election victory. And here are his approval ratings as of the making of this video. According to history, he will lose voter share in 2024 as compared to 2020, which means, again according to history, that he is set up to lose. The question then becomes this: did Barack Obama buck the trend, or did he start a new one? And remember this, his vice president was Joe Biden. There is one more piece of history Joe Biden is facing. Here are the only 2 individuals who have been elected to federal office 4 times: Franklin Roosevelt and Richard Nixon. FDR, of course, won an unprecedented 4 presidential terms in 1932, 36, 40, and 44. The Constitution no longer allows for that. Richard Nixon won his presidential terms in 1968 and 1972, but also won vice presidential terms with Dwight Eisenhower in 1952 and 1956. Incidentally, neither Roosevelt nor Nixon completed that 4th term. However, each of these gentlemen also suffered a defeat. Going back to the 1920 election, Harding defeated James Cox in a massive landslide, but often not remembered is that Cox's veep in that election was Franklin Roosevelt. Perhaps more well remembered was that Nixon ran for the presidency against John F. Kennedy in 1960, taking the loss. With each of their records standing at 4-1, Joe Biden will look to join them as the only 4-time winners of elections to federal office, but will look to be the first to ever do so without taking a loss. Others have tried. John Adams couldn't do it. George H.W. Bush couldn't do it. Is Joe Biden the one to do it? The odds are against him, but is that enough to beat him? Let's take a look at the map and officially kick these predictions into gear. We're going to be using the website 270towin.com, which is extremely appropriate because 270 electoral votes is the magic number to get a majority. We're going to keep with traditional colors here. Blue is going to represent Democrats. Red is going to represent Republicans. So the blue states are going to go to Joe Biden. The red states are going to go to Donald Trump. We're going to start with the safe blue states. States that no matter what are going to vote Democrat in 2024. We'll start with the West Coast. We got Washington, Oregon, and California. Can't be forgetting Hawaii out there in the Pacific Ocean. Now we go to the Northeast. We're going to get these little states out of the way, and including that is the District of Columbia, not a state. Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. The rest that we can actually click on the map here, New York, Vermont. Now looking at Maine, we're going to give Maine's 1st congressional district to Biden and the state overall to Biden, leaving open the 2nd district. Maine is one of 2 states that split up their electoral votes. Can't forget Illinois here in the Midwest either. So just like that with the safe blue states, Joe Biden picks up 183 electoral votes, which is more than 2/3 of what is needed to win. Now we've got some safe red states, states that pretty much no matter what are going to be voting Republican and voting for Donald Trump. We're going to start all the way at the top geographically, but the bottom left corner of the screen here, and give Alaska to Trump. We're going to go to the plains now: Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Utah. We're going to give Nebraska and the 1st and 3rd districts to Trump, leaving open the 2nd district, them being the other state to divide electoral votes. Kansas and Oklahoma will also go to Trump. We'll head to the south: Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Going a little further to the Midwest now is Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia. These are more states covering more land, but overall fewer votes. We have 115 safe red votes. The current tally is Biden 183, Trump 115. We're going to look at the likely states here, and you can argue that some of these states can be considered safe, but just to cover ourselves a little bit, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to these predictions. It's very unlikely that these states are going to flip. The state of Colorado never really went through a swing state phase. It was red, and then it became blue. For our purposes, we're going to give them a slightly lighter shade of blue and put it in that column. New Hampshire is not really a swing state anymore. It was for a while, but it's been very reliably Democrat. Can't see that changing. So those two states add 14 votes to Joe Biden's column, giving him 197. These red states could also be considered locks, but they haven't been massive winners for Republicans going forward. We're still going to give them to Trump in this exercise. We're going to start down here, bottom central, with Texas, heading north toward Missouri, and then Iowa. It would certainly be a massive problem for Trump if he lost these states. It would likely write off his election possibilities. We now have 38 of the 50 states covered here, just with safe and likely. That is enough to actually pass a constitutional amendment. Republicans make up ground here. They pick up 56 votes in this round for a total of 171, still trailing Joe Biden and the Democrats by 26. We have 12 states and 2 congressional districts remaining. Now we're going to take a look at the leaning states. Things could happen to switch these up, but it would take something seemingly quite out of the ordinary. Starting with the blue ones, New Mexico could be tricky as a border state, but it ought to stay blue this time around. Minnesota isn't quite the Democrat bastion it once was, but it's been over 50 years since Republicans have won it at the presidential level. Don't see that changing this time around. And while Virginia has shown a red streak of late, it has enough urban population that Dems can count on it coming around. That's 28 more for the Democrats and Joe Biden, giving them 225 total. Now the red states. Given recent trends, Florida may seem more like a likely red state, but given historical trends, we feel safer about putting it in the lean category. That big prize is followed by another in Ohio, placed into the lean category for the same reason as Florida. That's a big gain of 47 for Trump and the Republicans, making this close at 225 to 218. We now have 7 true swing states and 2 congressional districts that will decide this election, same as it ever was. Everything here will now fall into the tilt category. We'll give Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, mostly encompassing Omaha, to Biden. Nowhere near enough to move the state, but 1 electoral vote will go in his column. That will be offset by Maine's 2nd district going to Donald Trump. Now we look at North Carolina. Joe Biden flipped a few states in 2020, but North Carolina was not one of them. Could he pull the trick this time? Unlikely. If Obama couldn't win any new states in 2012, Joe Biden doesn't seem likely to do so. Moreover, Obama won North Carolina in 2008 before losing it in 2012. This state goes to Trump, giving him his first lead in this exercise, 235 to 226. We're now going to look at the states Joe Biden did flip in 2020, starting with Pennsylvania. In what was looking like a favorable year for Republicans in the 2022 midterms, Democrats held every single Senate seat that they were defending while actually flipping one, and that was in Pennsylvania. It should remain extremely close again, and Trump has performed better here than any Republican since Ronald Reagan, but we don't see him getting over the hump. A big win for Biden, taking back the lead 245 to 235. A similar situation in Michigan. No Senate seat in 2022, but the governor's race showed the Dems' power in that state. Those elections statewide can play out differently, but the power of Detroit should prove too much. Another massive win and a massive hold for Biden, getting him closer to overall victory, but not there yet at 260 to 235. We discussed New Mexico as a border state, now we take a look at another border state, Arizona. Although it was called early in the night in 2020, Arizona was razor thin. It wouldn't take much of a swing for Trump to recapture a state that Republicans won every year but once since 1952, including by Trump himself. we have our first flip, and Trump narrows the margin to 260 to 246. Speaking strictly mathematically, this now renders Nevada as meaningless. Sorry to say so, Nevadans. This was not a state that Biden flipped in 2020, as it was blue in 2016. Maybe it's just for the tension it adds to the end of this, but we say this stays blue, placing Biden at 266 and needing only one of the remaining states, while Trump will need them both. We are now in Wisconsin, the only true swing state where Republicans won a Senate seat in 2022, although it was closer than expected and it was almost a flip. A true purple state. We say that Donald Trump will see the writing on the wall in Pennsylvania and Michigan before it's too late and make a last move for Wisconsin, and that it works. Wisconsin flips red. The count is now 266 to 256, and everything will now come down to Georgia. The last two election cycles has seen Georgia take ground zero in the national discussion. Georgia's runoff system in their Senate elections creates scenarios where the election extends into December. That's happened 3 times, twice in 2020 and once in 2022. Each time the Democrat won. Georgia was also the closest state race in 2020, which the Democrats, as Joe Biden, won. The question here is, did Democrats overperform, or is there a new trend in the state? If results were a little bit more split, we could call it overperformance. State-level elections have gone the way of Republicans, but nationally, Georgia is getting bluer. Won't change this time. Joe Biden wins Georgia and wins the election with a final electoral count of 282 to 256. Here is the whole map just laid out in plain red and plain blue. Joe Biden bucks the trend by winning his 4th federal election without a loss. He bucks the trend, yet oddly continues one by winning re-election as an incumbent despite losing voter share for a second consecutive time. The nation itself appears to be tipping to the left at the moment. We can argue why or whether that's true or not, but results are saying that's probably true. It may be just that Democrats have yet to prove that they can be outmaneuvered on the ground game with ballot harvesting and whatnot. All of this adds up to a Joe Biden victory, placing him in his 6th decade within the halls of government. To reiterate, this was a non-partisan prediction. If I had to bet money on each of these state results, this is how I would bet it. If you disagree, drop a comment and let me know why, and please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. This wasn't the usual fare for this channel, but I felt like doing something just a little bit different. We'll be back with our regularly scheduled program next time. Thank you so much, and I hope you have an awesome day.